What warning signs are you seeing that no one is paying attention to?
The collapse of public education is coming faster than any of us think.
It's kinda already here in the inner cities. Talk to any inner-city high school teacher about their kids' reading comprehension.
LMAO, spend a day on Reddit, and you'll understand how awful reading comprehension has gotten.
You know it's bad when the 2000s internet starts to feel smarter than today's, because it sure as hell was not smart back then.
The death of higher education in the UK. If you applied for university in 2005, a 3-year degree in any subject plus a maintenance loan, money to pay for living, would cost you £8,700, which US about $12,000-ish. This loan was paid back at 0.2% interest, which was about $10,000 in total. If you apply today, it will cost you about £60,000, $80,000. The loan will be paid at 7.3% interest, so on a graduate pay spine of 38K, 95K over 20 years, you will pay about 65 to 80Ks out of pocket and still owe 35K, which will be wiped out at the 29-year point. Source: tasked to conduct a retention study comparing postgraduate fee increases with the housing crisis. Numbers are approximate because I don't have it to hand.
Teachers are quitting in droves.
I'm a music teacher. Just last night, I was talking to 2 of my colleagues who said they're not excited for performances anymore because they spend the whole evening herding cats and putting in a ton of mental and physical labor, and then go home and wonder how many angry parent or admin emails they'll get the next day. These are people who wanted to teach because they're passionate about their subject and want kids to have a great experience with it. It's super sad.
My partner was an elementary school music teacher. This was his 3rd semester out of the profession. He works in tech now. I can't describe the difference in mental well-being I've seen, not to mention the financial stability. He loved music, and teaching music more than anyone I know, but it was killing him. Knowing how important teaching is, but also caring about the quality of life my teacher friends get to have, makes it feel so bad when I recommend quitting. But I can't argue with the results. There's no space for people who love what they do in the classroom.
I was a teacher, adjunct professor. It was my favorite thing. I absolutely adore my students and had such a great relationship with my students. I have saved emails and messages from some of them after they graduated. They write me to say how they've gotten their first jobs in the industry. Some told me I changed their life and they are so grateful. The pay and treatment was awful. There is a state limit here on how much an adjunct professor at a community college can be paid. $400 per class per pay period each semester. I was teaching 3 classes per semester, and my take-home pay at the end of the month was less than $2,000. Now I have a job where I work about 30% as much, with much smaller responsibilities, mostly from home. I make $70K per year. I miss teaching every day though. I hope when I'm older I can go back and teach in my spare time. Edit. I want to be clear for the laws in my state. The law doesn't specifically limit the 400 sour number, but the number is calculated as a percentage of total allocated budget that it cannot exceed. It just happens that the budgets for adjuncts are usually not touched or prioritized, and obviously school budgets aren't increasing for government schools, so that's why it's that amount.
I'm a teacher who left the U.S. because U.S. children are horribly raised, and the school system punishes teachers and not students for bad behaviors. Children are put into bubbles where they're not supposed to experience any negative feelings at any time in their formative years, which makes them grow into incredibly weak and entitled adults. Children need to learn to experience adversity maturely in the safe environment of the school so that they can handle the unavoidable adversity of real life. I get trying not to scar children emotionally, but failing a child for a school year or punishing them for bad behavior and not just giving them a talking to is not going to scar them for life. On top of this, teachers are paid a pittance compared to most other professions. Horrible work conditions, no support or gratitude, low pay, and few career prospects.
I've also heard from teacher friends that a lot of reading curriculum is bad wrong, so kids are having a literacy crisis of sorts. Scary.
Yeah, childhood literacy rates in the U.S. have gone down 29% in the last 10 years. Parents keep making excuses and denying it's happening. The mass denial of the problem and how it manifests in behavioral issues is a part of why it's been so untenable to be a teacher lately. But there are other things going on. It's fucked.
There's a loneliness epidemic that already has taken root and is getting worse. Romantic and platonic relationships are at an all-time low, and forming new relationships seems as impossible as ever. This is only going to cause more mental health issues and premature health issues.
I made a post because I've been struggling with loneliness for years now. It hurts when you're surrounded by people but don't feel included.
This is how I used to feel in a relationship. I used to think the worst thing in life was to be alone. It's not the worst thing in life is to end up with people who make you feel alone, says Robin Williams. I'm now single, live alone, and no longer crave validation or love or attention in order to improve my self-worth. I much prefer being alone now. It's so liberating. No more compromise, no more sacrifice. The freedom to get to choose every single day what I want to do without having to run it by someone else to see if they want to do it is beyond compare.
The Department of Defense is blaming American veterans for underwhelming enlistment numbers. Apparently, us complaining about how bad it is to be in the military is preventing them from pulling the wool over people's eyes. On that note, please educate yourselves on the rape and sexual assault statistics across all branches of the armed forces and spread the word.
I bring up rampant sexual abuse every time a recruiter somehow finds my phone number. It always ends the conversation.
I lived in Japan for a few years. I was not military at all. During that time, I reached out to an English-speaking mental health organization and was placed with a therapist who was based in Okinawa and specialized in sexual assault trauma. Okinawa is a part of Japan with a lot of military bases. It did not take long for me to put two and two together.
I remember seeing a video online of a veteran telling others that she was gifted a knife to carry around her neck everywhere by someone in her unit. She was warned by them that she was guaranteed to be raped while stationed abroad because it happened to everyone. She said in her video that when she was raped several months after being stationed abroad, she was relieved because it meant she no longer had to wait for it to happen. I really wish I could remember where I saw this video, but I saw it when I was putting research on what it's like in the military as a woman, because I was actually considering enlisting, and everyone around me was telling me to do it. I'm so grateful that this one video popped up on my feed at the right moment for me. Otherwise, I might have actually enlisted. Some people around me tried to convince me, oh, you should still go. That's not everybody's experience. It's a job. Yada yada. All of the people who I knew who had gone in were men, so I didn't have a woman I knew who I could ask. It seemed strange for me not to get the perspective of a woman when I'm a woman. And the more I researched and saw more and more people going, don't tell your female relatives or friends to enlist. This is how bad it is. The more I was like, you know what? No, I'm not going in. This is not worth it.
On my local city sub, a recruiter posted, saw a lot of young females responding. I chimed in about the sexual assault stats, and he played dumb, asked me to provide reliable statistics, saying SA rates higher in the armed forces, then turned it around, saying I must have a victim mindset. I was never so appalled in my life. They really do try and pull the wool over eyes.
Being in healthcare for almost 30 years, I will say, hands down, that the insurance you choose is actually more important than the doctor you choose. Your insurance carrier will dictate your care way more than your physician will. They decide what tests you get, when you can have them done, if authorization is required, whether or not your doctor recommended surgery is truly medically necessary, and when you have to leave the hospital if you're ever admitted. If they believe you no longer meet medical criteria for IP care, you're out, no matter what your doc thinks or wants for you.
If only we actually had a choice. Most Americans are stuck with whatever shitty coverage their employer provides. And most of those that aren't in that group have even shittier government options. Yay, best healthcare system in the world.
And then you are afraid to leave your job because you don't want to lose the healthcare coverage. It's messed up.
As someone that's worked in hospitals for 25 years, get ready to just do without healthcare because that shit has been limping along for a decade. The price conspiracy is so vast, i.e., so many people need to get rich, that you can spend $250,000 in the hospital, and every single person that took care of you is paid the bare minimum, and the hospital you went to is teetering on bankruptcy, while people who had nothing to do with anything take all the money. There are like 4 layers of insurance companies that exist to do nothing but impoverish the whole system because they bought that right from the government. That shit isn't sustainable.
I fucking hate it. I just relocated and was looking into rad tech programs in my new state. And out-of-state tuition is almost $50,000 for the 2-year program, LOL. I would gladly get into healthcare if getting an education to do so wouldn't put me into even more debt on top of my useless undergrad. The U.S. needs to start subsidizing healthcare education. I'm not sure why we're not already doing that.
The tiny harbingers of the breakdown of the social contract, road rage, a general lack of courtesy, and immediate escalation for the smallest inconvenience. People just don't care as much, and it's becoming a social contagion. Why would an individual act in everyone's interest when it seems like one can't always expect the same?
I noticed an increase in dangerous drivers, but I convinced myself I was imagining it. Everyone thinks their city has the worst drivers, and since cars were invented, everyone whinges about how reckless other drivers are these days. But the road death toll in my state is nearly double the same time last year.
It doesn't really snow here anymore. We used to get at least a few inches 2 or 3 times per winter. It's been over 50 degrees the last 2 weeks. And an honorary mention. Seems like there's fewer and fewer bugs around each spring and summer. Used to go outside and there would be tons of bees, butterflies, beetles, and of course, tons of mosquitoes. Now, barely a fraction of that number.
This is mostly the same here, central New York, except any missing bugs have been replaced by some super invasive stink bugs that came over here like a decade ago on a boat.
We're literally undergoing a mass insect extinction crisis. The global population is declining by 2% per year due to human activity. Not all creatures have the majesty of a polar bear or the haunting song of a blue whale. Unlike you, most people don't realize they're disappearing right before our eyes. The worldwide consequences in terms of pollination, the food chain, and ecological niches will be devastating.
I live in Toronto, Canada. When I was a kid, there would be at least a foot of snow on the ground by now. These days, nothing, and not likely to be. Climate change is real, and we caused it. Also, as a former student of biology, seeing fewer bugs is very bad news, ecologically.